Hello, welcome to the Friday Film. I'm here with Dave Lane today.
Hi.
Hi. Who is an expert, local expert as well, on social enterprise.
Thank you.
And I don't know how long we've known each other. It's been a while, hasn't it?
Oh, it's got to be a good 4 or 5 years, maybe a bit more than that.
Didn't you write our business plan all those years ago?
Probably.
Because that's ancient now.
That could be
that's
about
ancient history.
That could be about 9 or 10 years. It might even be more.
We didn't know if we were friends then, though, did we? We just kind of
just business.
We were
associates,
colleagues then. Yes, it's very different. So anyway, over the years, we've, I think, learned to like each other.
We'll get there soon.
It's a work in progress. So anyway, I brought Dave along because I think social enterprise is an important part of community life, part of the jigsaw of community life. But can we start by who are you? And what do you work for, and how did you get into it? How's that?
Right, okay, that's a big one. Well, I'm Dave, as we already know. I'm Dave Lane. I run a company called Development in Social Enterprise, which is basically trying to help social enterprises. And that's based here in Solihull. And how did I get into it? I think I started work in the charitable sector when I was about 18, 19, and then grew throughout the next 20 years or so. Right. And learnt an awful lot from inspiring leaders, and I therefore got a passion to do a social enterprise type of activity, because I think that's the best way forward, because it's about community, it's about business, it's about wealth, but community wealth, and that inspires me really. So I thought, do some of that.
So what exactly then do you do? I mean, we can get onto the social enterprise, what that is, but what do you do? Do you do business advice? Do you do support? What do you?
Well, it's a bit of both, yeah. So a social enterprise really is think of it between a charity and a business, and a charity will do a lot of good work for a lot of people in the community, and it will generally be free. What we're trying to do in a social enterprise is actually develop that kind of activity for vulnerable people, to support people, but through a traded model. So that's what it is. That's what I try to do.
So you give advice then? And
I give advice.
Business plans.
I write business plans. I do finances. I look at the market. So it's much more business orientated, but it's about that community goal at the end of the day.
Well, let's get into social enterprise a bit more, because my experience through the years has been specifically around charity, voluntary sector. So you have the kind of business sector, Tesco's and all that.
Yeah.
Then you have the public sector, the councils and the government, and then you have it's broadened now, but the voluntary and community sector, which is basically people. Very people stuff, isn't it, and communities. So my experience around the Three Trees and community centre has been very much around the voluntary sector, and that's traditionally that's been around patronage. Give us some money and we'll do something nice, that sort of thing. So what I like about social enterprise, which I've got into quite heavily now, is the way it bridges the gap between that. We're skint, and will someone who's rich give us money to do something nice. To actually, we've got resources now. So that's what social enterprise tries to do, doesn't it? Or is there more to it?
No, that is what it tries to do. A lot will be, and there's no one kind of structure. So some social enterprises will actually be registered charities. But it really is about trying to earn money in a way that enables you to help the community and to help people who might be. So yes, you are trying to get away from that. Can you give me some money so that I can do some good work? It's can I raise and earn some money to do some good work? But whilst I'm doing that activity, I'm trying to be very good about it as well. So I'm trying to be very conscious about the environment. I'm trying to be very conscious about the people working in the enterprises, trying to make sure they have good employment rights, ensuring that basically trying to do business good and well, and then make some money, which then can do more good in the community. That's really what we're trying to achieve.
Right. So it's kind of then, it is about, and a private business can be this just as much. It's about being ethical in how you behave. So it's a very people-based approach to business.
Yeah, it's much more open than
Yeah.
a business might be. So if somebody came to a social enterprise and said, okay, tell me about your financial situation, they would be open about that. Tell me
Right.
about how you work. They would try and explain how they work and be open to letting other people know about their business models. Whereas a business might be more, actually, no, that's our business. It's none of your business.
Yeah.
And
I'm off to my villa in Spain.
you might take my ideas
Yeah.
and still, but that's not the social enterprise way. So it really is more about using that business principle and enabling people to grow, and being conscious about the environment, as I say. So trying to reduce your impact on it, making sure that it's as sustainable as it possibly can be. There's challenges, but that's really what you're trying to do.
So social enterprise then. So if it has quite a high ethical bar, the other question is, or the other difference, I think, is what it does with its profits then as well, isn't it? Because a normal business, you can, you pay your CEO or your shareholders and that sort of thing. So what's the difference with the profit that a social enterprise makes?
Well, there'll be a couple of differences, really. So the profit side of things, that is the money that you make over and above your costs, if you like. That will be reinvested back into your community aim. So as a social enterprise, you've got a community purpose as well. And that might be about people training, it might be about health and social care, it could be any of those types of things. It might purely be about making money and then investing it back into another charity or a local charity,
Right.
for example, so that you are giving that money to say, we know you do good work, here's some money, don't keep on asking us for it, we'll keep on giving it to you.
So
one of the things that I would give as example is our current chip shop.
Right, I was going to come to that, but you can start now.
Okay.
Yes.
So our current chip shop, you wouldn't necessarily think a chip shop was going to be a social enterprise. But what it does is that obviously trades, it sells a product to the customer, it makes money back, it has employment for people, and we're interested in that circular economy, so that we're trying to have local people employed so that they spend their money that they earn from us in the local context. We then want to make some money which then can be donated to charities in the local areas to do things that we can't do because we are selling chips essentially. But it's more than that. Of course, we're also trying to, as I said before, trying to ensure our impact on the environment is not very as limited as possible. We're trying to make sure the staff have a reasonable employment experience. But again, the whole point is we've got a product which is chips and fish. We sell it to the customer. We make money. We're not reliant on grants coming in from somewhere else.
Yeah.
And then that then is paid back into the community to do. So I don't take any money as a director. And then we, the other side of that is all the assets that belong to the company. So the equipment, if it had a building, those kind of things, those are locked. So if it all went wrong, I can't say, all right, I can't sell it off really cheaply and say, right, thanks very much. Didn't work, but I'm still rich. It's those assets belong to the community. So they would, any value of that asset would be locked in. So that's the other key feature of a social enterprise.
I'm just writing down all these things that I actually find quite exciting, which is probably a bit sad. So one of the things is I love the local economy. I think that's the ideal world in my language. From is the kingdom of God, that I work and I spend and then I pay my neighbour to do this job for me, and then they spend their money down the local shop that's run by. I know the world doesn't work like that in the West anymore, but the more you can keep that money local, it's worth far more. So if we pay someone to do a job, to work for us, and then they buy something from the shop next door, which is also employing someone, the economy, the community is supporting itself, isn't it? It's keeping it in. Because when the chippy first came along, which we haven't got to the chippy yet really, there was a strong chance that a national chain was going to take it on.
There was.
Or take on that unit, and a national chain takes it on, which is great. They probably would have sold lovely food and everything else. They would have employed someone locally, but any money it made straight out of our community and to wherever their central office might be. So now any money that we make straight back into our community, and it goes around again. So we're keeping the wealth within the community for as long as we possibly can.
That's the idea.
Till you buy something off Amazon.
That is the idea, and we all have to buy something.
Oh, yes.
At Amazon, otherwise,
well, the world's not. We don't all live in a village now all our lives, and only spend all our money in our village anymore. The world's different, but the longer you can keep it in your community, the better for everyone, isn't it?
Yeah, I would like to get to a position where there was a social enterprise where you as a consumer had choice. So whatever it is, because that's the other thing, a social enterprise can do anything and everything. It's a question of whatever it is, whatever you wanted to do, whether you wanted to buy a holiday, whether you wanted to buy a caravan, whether you wanted to pop down and buy your chips, that you should be able to go to a social enterprise and buy it. Because what you're doing then is you know that your money is going to do something a little bit more than just purchase what you are buying at the time.
So, I mean, what's unusual about the chip shops? So, for those who don't know, a few years back, 5 years ago,
oh, it just turned 6.
6, oh, blimey.
About
6 years ago, a unit became available as part of the redevelopment, and a consortium of local organisations came together and sorted out the finance and the systems and the structures and negotiated it. And we took on the unit, and we established, we think, is the country's only community-owned fish and chip shop. Now, traditionally, or more commonly, community enterprises are often around caring and about people, and they're about the more human side. Very rarely do they seem to be just set up to make money. And we figured people are going to buy fish and chips here, so why don't the community own it? So any money we make doesn't go off to someone's exotic yacht. It actually goes back in. So that's why the chip shop came about, and it survived the pandemic. It's a really difficult couple of years or so, wasn't it? But it's starting now to turn around. And whilst we want to provide good food in it, and we want to employ people well, pay them properly, we also think, well, when it starts making money, then that's the chance to either create more employment or invest in community activities and projects. So it's been quite a ride.
It has a very young business in real terms, and having the pandemic probably in the middle of, part way through year 2, year 3, many businesses don't survive after 3 years. So I think the team have done extremely well. But yes, that is about, there is now, it has turned that corner, it's got past the pandemic, it's managed to pay off, because again it had to raise money in order to start, because
that's one
none
of
us had the money to go and say, right, here we've got £200,000 to set up a chip shop. Nobody had it.
It's very unusual, because also we've had over the years occasionally people say, can I volunteer? And we're like, no, it's a business, and we've been very strict on that. It stands or falls as a business, doesn't it? We don't want charity. We want this to be community owned, and there's a sense of pride in that as well. Look, we've done this, and it works, and it's making a profit. We don't need any handouts. So for me, that's another element of it as an community achievement. We're not asking for anyone's help. I mean, we want to work with people, but we're not asking for handouts. We're saying that this can stand on its own 2 feet, and as a community, we can pull this off.
Yeah, and it shows that it can, because it is, and it has, as I say, gone through that very difficult period of COVID. And I'm sure people listening to this know that a number, because it's been reported nationally, a number of these kind of businesses and hospitality businesses in their own rights are having real trouble. Now, that might be, there might be some element that the profiteers at the top are still taking a lot of money out of it and don't want to reduce that margin, whereas a social enterprise might say, well, actually, we'll reduce the margin. What's important to us is this.
You do see that, don't you? If businesses aren't, it's not whether they're covering their costs. If they're not making enough profit, a larger company will just close that. Whereas a social enterprise works on a much more human scale. Is it covering its costs? Is it doing what it's meant to do? We'll let it carry on. Because if we shut that, we could have shut that a couple of points, and that'd be half a dozen people out of work.
It would be.
So it was carrying on. So we support that because it's much more human-sized business.
Is that it's thinking about the people. It's not thinking about the profit as such. Although we want to make a profit because, as we said, we want to use that profit for good purposes. But that is about a standalone business that can do it and grow, maybe have more. Whereas quite often a social enterprise might be, as you said, there's quite a lot in health and social care. And they're quite often a model which pretty much breaks even. So it still does cover its costs. It's doing some very valuable work, but it's still very, very tentative. Any problem with a contract or anything like that could
Yeah.
tip it. And that's I'm particularly interested in some of the enterprise models now where you can actually set up, do a traditional business that you might think is a traditional business that makes money, and then we can use that money to effect good in the local community, rather than let's do a good business that breaks even all the time.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean to say I don't want some of those, but it's how do we ensure? Because if we had 5 or 6 chip shops all making a bit of money, how many people would be employed there? In the region of 50 or so people, local people, but also then it would be making significant amounts of money that would enable us to do all sorts of interesting things for those who really can't afford it.
Yeah.
And in today's world, that's really needed, isn't it?
And it's an interesting approach. I think it is about empowerment, isn't it? Because any individual can run a business and own a business and do their own thing, and communities often don't have a shared power. I think particularly in areas like Chelmsley, where we are, communities often get bylined or not listened to. This is where the community says, we're doing this, it's successful, and also it gives us resources. So once it gets properly into profit, as a community we can say, well, look, we want to do this and we're just going to do it, which is one of the privileges of having wealth, isn't it? If you have wealth, you have choice. And a community that is struggling to have any resources, what's missing mostly is its choices about what it can and can't do. And it's not necessarily about some of the big stuff either. It's about the things that just build relationships and build trust between individuals. So I'm a massive fan of the empowerment that a social enterprise kind of brings. So yes.
Well, that's also the beauty the difference between charity. So a charity, and rightly so, needs to make sure that it's adhering to charity law, which generally means if it did have, and profit in a charity is called surplus, but it's very rare to see that. They would gradually start to do it, but then that surplus you can't just go, oh, there's a good opportunity, we can spend our money on that because the community needs it. It would have to sit in with whatever the charity was set up for.
Yeah. Rightly
so, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that's wrong, but that social enterprise model gives you that bit more freedom. And that means that you can address a problem that suddenly appears, for example, if you've got some money, rather than, okay, here's a problem, how do we address it? Right, we're going to need to go and ask such and such for money, we'll have to apply for this, we'll have to apply for that. The social enterprise can say,
we're just going to do it.
Let's fix it.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff.
Yeah.
So where do you see it going then, do you think? What would you like to see in terms of the local enterprise? I have an answer to this as well, but where do you think if the chip shop, is that enough on its own? I mean, you talked about expanding, or you'd love to see almost every option in terms of spending to be there's a social enterprise option. Is that what you'd like to see?
I'd like to see that locally. I'd like to see a hub of social enterprises offering various different things, helping people, local people, making a bit of money. Some would be break even, but collectively, I'd like to see more and more social enterprises where they can support each other, that they're actually starting to develop and change the community. So even things like housing, all sorts of things can be done by social enterprises. So it's a question of how I'd really love to see it build. The chip shop, I'd like to see 3 or 4 more, because then obviously you get to that point where you've got economies of scale. So you've actually got more power when you're going to suppliers. You can get, because that's the other side. A small business will pay more for their suppliers than a large business, and the large business makes more money than the small business. It's all a little bit unfair. It's all trying to make it a bit more of an even playing field and a one. So more social enterprises, plenty of choice, more chip shops that are social enterprises. I'd like to see all that, but of course, in order to get there, there is a need and an investment need. So we do need to build up the money first before you can just go, right, we'll go and do this, go and do that, because it's not cheap. It's not cheap to set up any business, really.
No one's handing out free money.
No.
Well, not very often. I mean, and the other thing I like about it is the social enterprise subverts the capitalist model, because the capitalist model is about I need to make money for me,
Yep.
and I'm look after me, and if the business is going wrong, it doesn't matter about. I'm not saying all business owners are like this. You know, I just shut the business down and I'll take out what I can. A social business actually says this belongs to us, and together we stand, and there's no individual that's got the power and owns it all. So, you know, we don't, although we're directors, we don't get paid.
No.
As directors, we don't get paid out of the profit. And I like that community ownership aspect, because it levels things off a bit, doesn't it? There's not sort of the rich, powerful people there that are managing all these things. We own it together and we're responsible together. So it's because I'm an ageing communist. Probably.
Yeah. Well, as you say,
Proper communist, not like the other ones.
As you say, it uses that capitalist principles, because that's the world we're living in.
Yeah.
But for social good, and that to me is the best way to run a business. But again, I grew through charities and doing work for people who needed support. So it's perhaps a conditioning of life. I don't know, but I think I would love to see. If we could get rid of all these profit-making businesses, and get to a point where they were all doing more for their community and investing in their community, I think we'd have a better world.
Yeah, and I think, thanks, Dave. I think I'm not preaching at you now, honestly, but the Old Testament picture of that, it talks about that everyone owns their own vineyard and gets the harvest from their own vineyard. So everyone's together. You reap the benefits of the work you do, rather than someone just creaming off all the profits and you still on the minimum wage. That's so the Old Testament image is that kind of version where everyone works and everyone benefits. It's an issue. It's an image of justice, really, which is what we're talking about, isn't it? Social justice. This is about. So anyway, a bit preachy there.
It was a little bit preachy, but you have to.
I can't help it if it's true.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks. Is there anything else you want to add? I mean, that was as I say, I'm a massive fan. If you'd have asked me sort of 8 or 9 years ago, social enterprise, I was not interested. I couldn't be bothered. It's like I got enough to do. But I love it now, and I think it is because of that empowerment and resourcing the community to make its own choices, and that human side of it. I think it's great. It is the way to run business. I think it respects people, doesn't it? And it respects our environment. So.
I suppose the only other thing I would say is if anybody out there is interested in that in any way and it sparks something in them, get in touch.
Get in touch. We're always looking for more entrepreneurs, aren't we?
We can't do them all ourselves.
We got a list. We got a list of businesses we want to get going. So if you're interested,
so come on in and we'll help.
And Google. You can Google Dave. It's www.DISE, isn't it?
Yeah, DISECIC.org.
DISE. I'll put it on the screen.
Or just
after.
Google Development in Social Enterprise, or even just Google Dave Lane.
Or come and see me and I'll tell you where he is, where he lives.
Yeah, or where I'm hiding.
Well, I won't tell you where he lives. Anyway, thanks, Dave. That was really good.
A pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks. And we'll see you next time.